All right, welcome to week 10 of English 101. This is our reading lecture for Rhetoric 1 this week. We're going to begin talking about our final short story of the semester, which is a story by a great writer, great public intellectual named James Baldwin, who passed away in 1987 and wrote a lot of novels, essays, just a brilliant person. And we're going to be reading one of his stories called Sonny's Blues. So let's jump in. I'm just going to talk a little bit about this and help you get into the story. Um, Now, I did put a couple of links here if you wanted to this is just Wikipedia, so nothing too original. But if you wanted to know more about James Baldwin, because I think he's a very fascinating person. Also, just a lot of the stuff he talked about gender, race, social class, all these. I mean, lots of writers do, serious writers talk about those issues, but he did it in a very, I don't know, it's still, to me, it still seems very timely if you're, all the things going on in our country around some of these issues. And he just seemed to be, I don't like the expression ahead of his time because he existed. But anyway, in some ways, it seems like his writing is just still so timely. So that's a little bit about James Baldwin. And then if you want to know more about Sonny's Blues, this is just kind of a silly video. I didn't make it, but it's somebody. And if you don't like swear words, don't watch it because he's very informal. But I think this is the one where he does. But anyway, it's just a kind of an explanation, overview of the story. So if you wanted a few more resources on this is a tough story. I don't mean it's necessarily really like the vocabulary, like all the stories we've read. I think they're pretty straightforward writing. He's not a particularly difficult writer. It's not like reading some people who you just can't sentence to sentence is difficult. But there's a lot going on in the story, and so again, if you want a little extra, that you could take a look at that. But let's just look at these questions first as you go into reading just the first 10 pages. Now, it sounds like a lot, right? Just 10 pages, and we're calling it a short story. It's kind of a long short story, if that makes any sense, but it's not a novel or a novella. It's not that long. But it's a pretty long story. So we're going to work with it for 3 weeks. This will be the last fiction that we'll read this semester, so that'll give us 5 stories to work with. On page 483, the narrator finds out that his younger brother, Sonny, is in trouble. And, if we look at the story, it starts out, just let me read just a little bit here real quick. I read about it in the paper. This is the first paragraph from the story. I read about it in the paper in the subway on my way to work. I read it and I couldn't believe it. And I read it again. Then perhaps I just stared at it, at the newsprint, spelling out his name, spelling out the story. I stared at it in the swinging lights of the subway car and in the faces and bodies of the people and in my own face, trapped in the darkness which roared outside. That's the first paragraph. So you can tell right away, we jump in and our narrator is struggling with something. You're going to find out, what that is as you go on. And it's not so much his problem as it is a family member's problem. And you'll see that as you go on. Sonny is not the narrator, by the way. So you'll have to notice that as you go through. Who is Sonny? A letter from Sonny to the narrator appears on page 188. Sorry, that's the wrong page number. But you'll see there's a letter. I think I've got 2 different versions of the story. These page numbers are accurate, 483. 493. That's from a different version. I need to edit that out. But there is a letter from the narrator. Where is Sonny writing from? I mean, to the narrator, rather. And why do you think the letter upsets the narrator so much? Why does he get so upset when he gets this letter? So take a look at that. As you read through this first 10 pages, that letter will appear in there somewhere. Forget about that page number. Have you ever had a friend or family member who is struggling with a very difficult problem? And you'll see that this is a family member, Sonny, who's struggling with something. How did his or her struggle make you feel? Were you or anyone that you know able to actually help them? Sometimes people struggle with things and it seems as though no matter what we do, we want to help, and it's impossible, for whatever reason. And particularly you'll see the kinds of issues that Sonny's struggling with are certainly in that category. That's very hard for an outside person, even a close friend or family member, outside their own, themselves, beyond themselves, to help them in any way. So again, think about these questions. Robert Frost once said, home is the place where when you have to go there, they have to take you in. Do you see home that way? Why or why not? Is there someone or some place that you think of as a place you can always go no matter what? So a lot of us attach home to a particular person, like my mom or my dad. Maybe that's a place I can go, a grandparent, an uncle, a friend. Or maybe it's an actual place like a town or a city or a neighborhood or a building, a house. But think about that for a little bit. This is going to get you into the story, Sonny's Blues. And again, we're going to be working with this one for several weeks because there's a lot going on in the story. Not a lot of action. It's not like car chases and stuff like most of the things we've read this semester, but a lot going on under the surface and a lot going on inside the minds of the main characters and inside the hearts, I guess you could also say, probably. All right. So the reading summary, which is posted, is also covering those first 10 pages of the story. What's the main problem the narrator is trying to deal with? So maybe think about that and see if you can get that. And if you're not sure, maybe say, I'm not really sure, but I think it might be this. But see if you can add that into the reading summary in our discussion board. At the bottom of page 490, the narrator begins a description of the housing project where he and his family live. How does he feel about this, his home? Explain what kind of emotions or feelings or connections or lack of connection he has to that place. And then on page 493, the narrator's mother reminds him that if she dies, the mother, Sonny won't have anyone to, quote, look out for him. How do you think the narrator feels when he hears this? It's his younger brother, right? Have you ever felt responsible for someone else? And how did that make you feel? How did that make you act differently? So again, this is a setup for Sonny's Blues. We're going to be working with this story for about 3 weeks. So I hope you like it. And we'll be writing about this one, excuse me, like I said, for essay number 7, our last essay. So we're going to take some time with it, and by the time we get to it, you'll have, hopefully be pretty comfortable with the story and able to incorporate it into the last essay that we write. As always, let me know if you have any questions. Send me an email or visit my office hours, and I look forward to reading your work over the next few weeks on Sonny's Blues.